Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Wednesday, March the 20th, 2024. Looking at that gospel reading from this past Sunday, actually, I'm going to include some verses that I did not read for you if you were in church or you've watched the service. And I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. But looking at Mark 13, beginning at the third verse, actually, for today. When he was sitting at the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? What will be the sign that all of these things are about to be accomplished?" And Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." And so in my sermon on Sunday, I talked about the Winston Churchill's famous saying that after the victory in North Africa in the Battle of El Alamein, that this is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps, he said, the end of the beginning. And Jesus goes on to talk about, as I mentioned yesterday, the fact that we're not going to know the day or the time, the hour. But in the verses that I didn't include on Sunday, when Jesus is talking about you're going to hear wars, rumors of wars, and earthquakes, famines, all that kind of stuff. But then he goes on to say, but in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of the earth. So that when that day comes, and we don't know when that's going to be, it's not going to be the end. What is it going to be? It's going to be, in essence, a new beginning. Dale Pilgrim once wrote, "Death through our eyes is the end." It's that image of watching an old movie which concludes when the words "the end" come up on the screen. We conclude that the movie is over and we move on either in laughter or tears. Well, Jesus, he reminds us, presents a different picture. He doesn't call it death, but sleep. Death is not the grand finale called the end. It's the second DVD to the story. I remember even before the DVDs, when you had the video tapes, there were some that were long enough, Titanic being one of them. Our daughter Caitlin, when she was young, of course, she's going to be 33 now, so this tells you how long ago that was. She was always, she wore out, I don't know how many copies of the, Titanic, but you got to a certain point and that tape ended, you had to take it out, put the other one in. It was a 2-tape thing because of the length of the movie. It reminds me of a story that my wife Jeanette used to tell. 1965, some of you remember the great music, The Sound of Music, the great movie rather. Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer and those wonderful kids, and what a great story. And she remembers going to the movie theater with her brother. Now, somebody must have dropped them off at the theater. These were simpler days, right? Because she would have been about 7, he would have been maybe 8, a little bit old, not quite 9. And they let them, once they bought the tickets and got them into the movie, I guess they felt comfortable leaving them there. And so they watched the movie and they were really enjoying it. All of a sudden it got dark, the lights came on, and I don't know whether neither of them could really read or probably couldn't read very well. If you remember The Sound of Music, there was an intermission. There were some long movies back in those days. There was a bunch of them in the 60s for whatever reason. They don't do those anymore, mainly because when they added all those multiplex theaters and everything, they wanted to turn over movies shortened for a period of time. They've gotten a little bit longer again. But for a while, they were like an hour and a half because they wanted to get one group in and another group out. Well, back in the 60s, I remember some really, really long movies, Sound of Music being one of them. So the movie stops, there's some music, the lights come back on, and but it wasn't the end of the story, she didn't think. But her brother Brian saying, no, come on, we got to go. We got to go. It's over. We got to go. Now, probably some people were getting up to use the restroom, I'm sure. And he convinced her to get up and get out of the movie. Now, they were dropped off at the movie, and but they knew that the grandmother, I think it was her grandmother, lived around the corner. So they walked to the grandmother's house. And what happened, of course, was they missed the second half of the movie. That was the intermission. They probably were too young to understand that word when it came across the screen. And our life is like that. In a sense, Jesus reminds us and promises that that's just the first act. That's just the break. Death is that break that we might call the intermission. And then the story resumes. The story resumes in the life to come, in the new life to come, where we get to finish the story. It doesn't leave us hanging. We get to finish the story, being reunited with God and all our loved ones. And so death, he said, is sort of like the second, or what comes after the end, is that second DVD or that second videotape. I would say it's like those long movies with an intermission. It's what happens after the intermission. Part of the story ends there, but it's not the end of the story. The end of the story comes after the intermission, and that's what we look forward to in that life and in that world to come. Well, hope you have a great day. We'll continue our discussion of this passage and the end times and all that good stuff tomorrow. Hope to see you then. Take care. Bye.